Finland's ReOrbit raises 45 million euros to take on Starlink with sovereign satellites. Google opens its TPUs to rival cloud providers in a challenge to NVIDIA. China's Zhuangzi 3.0 quantum computer sets a new benchmark. Anthropic's $1.5 billion US copyright deal hits a legal roadblock. And Apple's fall event. I hope I didn't wake you up. Welcome to Hashtag Trending. I'm your host, Jim Love. Let's get into it. Finland's ReOrbit has just closed a record-setting 45 million euro Series A round, the largest ever for a Finnish space company aiming to give governments independent control over their own satellite networks as an alternative to Elon Musk's Starlink. In today's geopolitical climate, ReOrbit is betting on a value proposition of neutrality and supporting national sovereignty, offering both the hardware and software needed for countries to own and run satellites completely. Founded in 2019, ReOrbit offers a software platform called the iOS of satellites, capable of operating both as geostationary Siltasat and low Earth orbit EUCOSAT systems. That 45 million euro round included 8 million in public shares that filled in just 4.5 hours and 37 million that went to a list of companies, many of them you wouldn't have heard of, but also who picked it up quickly. So why the lineup of investors? ReOrbit already has contracts worth hundreds of millions with one country and multiple MOUs with others. It's now aiming for €1 billion on its order books over the next 4 years. Europe's space sector is no longer just a poor cousin of the US. Projects like the European Space Agency's IRIS constellation are moving forward, and ReOrbit is carving out its own niche by emphasizing sovereignty and flexibility rather than just being the biggest provider. Its upcoming European Space Agency in-orbit demonstration satellite, slated for 2026, will be a key test. ReOrbit's rise signals a global shift in the space race, moving from consumer broadband to countries and sovereign control. Remember we did that story on Google reinventing itself? Well, Google is doing it again. It's offering its powerful tensor processing units, or TPUs, once exclusive to its own infrastructure, now offered to rival AI cloud providers. London-based FluidStack has already signed up to deploy TPUs in its New York data center, backed by Google's equity and a $3.2 billion lease guarantee. This is a new move. NVIDIA's GPU dominance isn't threatened yet, but expanding Google's TPU footprint is a big pivot from internal use to a potential new revenue stream, and Google is uniquely positioned to finance this. With this recent deal, it's taken a 14% equity stake and agreed to fill any leasing gap with up to $3.2 billion in financing. And Google has also approached other emerging competitors like CoreWeave and Crusoe, who depend heavily on NVIDIA hardware, signaling that FluidStack may just be the first in what Google hopes could be a lineup of new clients. Analysts are seeing potential in this shift. Morningstar estimates that Google's TPU business and DeepMind could together be worth around $900 billion. And there's still Google's next-gen Ironwood chips, which are tailored for inference, the day-to-day running of AI, as opposed to the TPUs, which are largely used in training. So Google isn't just expanding reach. It's making a big entry into a market largely dominated by NVIDIA. It's another chapter in Google's reinvention, moving beyond the ads and search business that's now in flux into not just software, but right into the core infrastructure of artificial intelligence. China's University of Science and Technologies unveiled a Zhuangzi 3.0 quantum processor, a 105-qubit machine that reportedly performs certain calculations up to a quadrillion times faster than today's best classical supercomputers. Now, it's a staggering claim, and we always have to remember that this speed applies to a very narrow benchmark test, not to everyday computing. The key benchmark is called random circuit sampling. And think of this as a stress test where the computer has been asked to run a circuit full of randomized operations. The output has a unique fingerprint that's practically impossible for a classical supercomputer to reproduce. I say that because there have been a lot of claims in the past that a quantum processor has done what a classical computer would take millions of years to do, only to find out several months later that a classical computer actually solved the problem in a lot less time. But this random circuit sampling is supposed to be tough enough to prove a quantum processor has crossed into a performance territory beyond classical machines. And, at least for now, the Chinese have taken the lead. Now, this doesn't mean the US is standing still. No, Google's Willow chip and IBM's Heron are pushing ahead in qubit counts and error correction. But Zhushangji's 3.0 is showing performance levels that US chips haven't yet demonstrated. What was once called a Sputnik moment, and it was named after the satellite that the Russians launched in the 1950s that woke the US up to the fact that their arch rival, the Soviet Union, had beaten them into getting a satellite into orbit. The US had clearly underestimated the Soviet Union. And it's possible that history is repeating itself in computing, this time with China. And that's a big deal because the entire US economy right now is resting on its dominance in advanced technology. And these recent breakthroughs are important. The race isn't to get the best benchmark score. These aren't real-world applications. But as the error rates drop and reliability improves, practical uses are starting to come into view. This could mean things like simulating molecules for new drug therapies or, more ominously on the other side, breaking older forms of encryption that are still in use across the internet. I think it's fair to say that the US thought it had an insurmountable lead in AI and recently woke up to China's progress. Now it's time to take a look at quantum computing with the same lens. As they say in baseball, it ain't over till it's over, but we're getting closer to the seventh inning, and you don't want to be too far behind. And speaking of it's not over till it's over, a big surprise on the Anthropic copyright settlement that we covered just this week. U.S. District Judge William Alsup has refused to give the $1.5 billion deal preliminary approval, calling it nowhere close to complete. He raised concerns about how authors would be notified, what works are included, and whether the process might be forced on the writers without their consent. Alsup has set some firm deadlines. Anthropic must deliver a finalized list of covered works by September 15th and sample claims forms by September 22nd, with a follow-up hearing on the 25th of September. This isn't lost yet. Author groups like the Authors Guild still support the agreement, arguing that it's the fairest way to resolve mass copyright claims. But for now, the deal's on hold. And finally, you remember when Apple's announcements were events you just couldn't miss? When you used to watch them live, waiting for the big reveal, holding your breath for that famous one more thing? Well, Apple had its fall showcase today, and to be honest, I forgot about it. So I was scrambling to catch up. But I'm not sure I missed much. The big reveal was that the iPhone 17 Air, Apple's thinnest phone ever at 5.6 millimeters, made of titanium, rocking a 6.5-inch ProMotion display. Cool. The regular iPhone 17 gets a 6.3-inch screen. It's got a new A19 chip, an improved dual 48-megapixel camera. On a nerd-to-nerd basis, the chip is seriously cool, but on a for-real basis, the battery life is probably the biggest thing I care about. My phone's not that slow. The Pro and Pro Max add triple lenses with 8 times optical zoom, better cooling, and a redesigned aluminum shell. Neat. There are new AirPod Pro 3 and updated Apple Watches with health features like hypertension alerts and live translation. It's kind of interesting. But at the end of it, do I want a new phone? Or better, do I have to have one? And the answer is, meh. The stuff isn't bad. The designs are refined. The chips are faster. The cameras are sharper. But when did we start thinking not bad was a good way to describe Apple launches? Remember when you couldn't wait to see the new model? When these events felt electric and when you were dying to see what the one more thing would be? Yeah, me too. And that's our show. I'm still praying to the gods of Google and Alexa, and I don't want to jinx it because I believe in Murphy's Law. But all things being good, we seem to be back on the smart speakers. We did get some volunteers for our first live audience show. I only want a small audience for the AI show. But if you are interested still, toss your name in the hat and we'll see what we're going to do. But get your name in there if you're still interested. Go to technewsday.com or .ca, use the Contact Us page, let me know you're interested, and could be available from 8:30 to 10 a.m. on a Friday. I don't know if this week is too soon. I'm going to decide on the timing tomorrow. It's just something I want to try. And God, I miss Steve Jobs and that one more thing. So here's my one more thing for you. Have a wonderful Wednesday.